To my YouTube channel, Nani the Coder, and today's lecture we're going to be talking about fetching data in react.js. In this lecture we will discuss how to fetch data from external server or from external backend and how we can render that data in our React components. Before we dive into the lectures, please make sure you watch the previous lectures on react.js in order to follow along. Let's just dive into the lecture. So in the previous lecture we talked about the props and also we talked about states. What is basically a state and what is a prop, and also we console logged or printed the props basically that we received from the parent element or the parent component. So now we want to basically get rid of this for now, and we want to fetch some data from the server, and I'll also get rid of this for now just to make it more cleaner. And when I go here, you can see that we have the user component and then the post component and then the comments and everything over here. Now, if you remember that we have this API in place that we want to get our users from, how we can do that now. And I want to render all of the 10 users in here. So to make use of that, basically what we have to do is we have to call a lifecycle component that basically called componentDidMount. componentDidMount. So the componentDidMount is triggered when this component is basically mounted or rendered. So in here we will just make a call or a fetch call to the API that we already talked about. That is basically the JSON placeholder API. So we can just simply make use of the fetch over here, and as you can see that we are getting fetch over here. And I'll just have to copy this URL over here and I'll just paste it, and in here I can just put the dot then and response.json. So you can see that we are getting this response, and I'll just simply console log the response and see what we are getting over here in the response. So remember, when this component is mounted, then this function will be called. That is basically to fetch the data from this URL. That's basically we're calling this endpoint to get the users, and it will get us the users data from this API. When I save it, and I'll go to my app, I'll go to the network tab over here, and you can see that we have the users, and we have called this API. It's basically just JSON placeholder. And basically there's the endpoint that we are hitting, and in the preview you can see that this is the data that we are getting as a response, and we have 10 users over here, and each has their own names and all of this data. So now what we want to do is basically when we receive this data as a response, then we want to return it from this function as well, and we want to put this data, this user's data, into this user state. How we can do that actually? In order to do that, we can simply write another then, and you can see that we are returning this response as a data, and in this data we are setting the state like this. So React provides us this function that's called set state in order to set the state of the component, and we can access the property like this. Basically this is this property that we are accessing, and then we are assigning this data to this users array over here. So this is how we actually set the state in React. When I save it, I just go to the components over here, and when I click on the users component over here, you can see that we have the list of users, and once we have the response from the API, it's set into the API, it's set into the users array, and now we have all of the users data like this. So this is how we wanted to fetch the data. Now we have access to all of this data, but there could be a question why we want to set the state like this. We can simply have access to the state like this, for example state, and we can simply, that is basically the object that we want, and we can simply put it like this. Can't we do this? So yeah, this is totally not recommended, not a good practice, because React has this core concept of immutability. That is basically the state is immutable, and in simple term it means that you should not modify directly the state, and instead you should be creating a new object out of the state and then update it, and you can just do that by using the setState function. So you cannot do it like this, or you shouldn't be doing it like this and mutating the state directly. So yeah, that is basically the key concept that you need to keep in mind. So now we have access to all of the users, and in here, for example, instead of rendering the users component, I want to render the list of the users. For example, in here, just like this, I'll just map through this or loop through this, and in here I'll just render a simple div element, and I'll just print out the names for the users for now. So I can just do something like this, return, for example, div, put in the div element, I'll get rid of this, and I'll just print the user name over here. And also, since we need to provide a key, I have access to the user.id. As you can see from the developers tool, when I go to the users, each user have its own ID over here that's basically unique, and I want to make use of it. I want to make use of it as a key. And since we are not writing the pair braces, I don't need to return anything. It will be returned automatically. If you're familiar with the arrow function, and you know how it works, how it really works. So I'll just comment it out for now, and I'll save the component. And now you can see that we have a list of all of the 10 users over here. So this is how we can fetch data from the external API, and you can check it in the network tab. And also this is how you can render the data once it's been set into the state. So the componentDidMount lifecycle is basically what helps you here. So it is triggered when the component is basically mounted or rendered. Then it makes call to this API using the fetch, and then we are getting the response, and we're converting it to JSON, and then we are setting it to the state like this. And once the state is set, and once we have data in the state, then we are rendering the data like this. We are rendering the user name out of it like this. So that is it about this lecture, and I hope you have learned something new in this video. Please like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure to press the bell icon for future updates. And until then, I'll see you in the next lecture.